Hey, welcome back to The Way I See It. One of the things that I wanted to do is just videos that I see and I just never have time. I never have time to just relax, do nothing and just vegetate on something interesting or something funny, right? And so I'm going to start doing that. I It's 2026. I'm going to start doing that. Anybody that has heard of the 70s, let alone lived through the 70s, could probably find this one extremely interesting. 20 things that are illegal now but were normal in the 70s. I'm really curious. What is illegal now that we did in the 70s? I can't even imagine what that could be. Like, honestly. Let's get into it. Here we go.
I'd walk a mile for a camel.
20 incredible things from the 70s that are banned today. Welcome back for a nostalgic look at the 1970s, an era defined by a sense of liberty and boldness. A time when many common activities are now either forbidden or outright dangerous. Do you recall a time when you could bike without a helmet, or when it was normal for children to buy cigarettes for their parents? From seemingly innocent pastimes to dramatically different social norms, how did the world change so much?
Wait a minute. When was it okay for kids to have cigarettes? We had the fake cigarettes, the ones they were candy, and when you blow into or on them, it would, the powdered sugar would puff out, but it only did it one time and it looked like you were smoking. But there was no I don't recall any kids smoking any cigarettes. I don't know about that. Now, I didn't realize they were going to. Don't stretch the truth. Now, I'm sure the truth is sensational enough.
Join us as we explore 20 things that were a regular part of daily life in the 70s, but could now get you in serious legal trouble or put your life at risk.
I remember
Prepare to
smoking on the
feel both
airplane.
nostalgic and amazed by the things that have vanished over time. Playing on train tracks. Let's begin with a memory from childhood that many of us share. Playing on train tracks. In the 70s, train tracks weren't just a path to school or home. They were an exhilarating playground. Kids would often walk on the rails trying to stay balanced on the shining metal, or simply take a shortcut across the station platform. Some even put coins on the tracks to see them get squashed by a fast-moving train, a classic but harmless prank. Back then, the attitude toward railway safety was incredibly casual. Hardly anyone thought about the potential dangers.
That's true. That's true. It was like, as long as you didn't hear a train coming, I mean, you could be near the tracks, crossing the tracks. I don't remember like playing on the track specifically, like sitting on the track, having a conversation, or putting coins on the track. But crossing the track, being near the track, that was no big deal. I mean, you could hear a train coming a mile away, so that wasn't a big deal.
But things are different now. Today, railroad companies in the US have put in place strict trespassing laws for track areas. Constant safety campaigns warn about the serious risks, as modern trains are faster and quieter and they need a much longer distance to stop than before.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I can imagine. Now that makes a lot of sense now that it's been said. Trains are faster, like bullets, and they are much quieter. So I can imagine that being really unsafe. And I'm just imagining the times that I have been walking along the train tracks. Yeah.
Stepping onto train property without permission is not only a life-threatening action, but also comes with significant fines and legal consequences.
Other looks so much like Cleveland where I grew up. Like the soot and the smoke in the air from factories. Whew, I don't
What
miss it.
was once a childhood game is now an illegal and highly dangerous activity. Clackers Toys. Speaking of dangerous childhood games,
Clackers. Oh my God, I was good at that. Oh yeah. Okay. Now we're talking.
do you remember Clackers?
Yes, I remember Clackers.
This toy was
Yes,
incredibly
I
popular in
remember.
the 70s. Exciting but surprisingly risky.
Woo!
It was made of two heavy, glossy acrylic balls connected by a string. The goal was to swing them up and down quickly so they would hit each other with a satisfying clack.
Yeah.
The faster you swung, the louder the sound, and the greater the chance you'd get hit in the hand, or even worse, in the face. Clackers were a lot of fun, but they also came with risks. If
I
you lost
remember,
control, the balls could
Like he's being all kind of crazy with it. Like, it was controlled. Like we held him like that and it was just controlled. Because you can't do all this because those balls were big and they were solid. They were like miniature golf balls. Not golf balls, miniature bowling balls. So you hit yourself in the head with one of them suckers and you're gonna get knocked out. I saw a girl using one time, like we were all clacking, and hers cracked. And I think after that I kind of stopped playing with them. But I was getting a little older too. I was like 10, 11, somewhere at 12, and I stopped playing with them because I just didn't want that thing to crack in my face. But yeah.
hit you in the face, causing bruises or even shattering into sharp pieces, which could lead to serious injuries. Due to the rise in injury reports, clackers were completely banned in many schools and public places. In some cases, as other sources have pointed out, they were banned because of the injuries they caused. Eventually, manufacturers had to redesign clackers with softer, safer materials to prevent accidents. What was once a test of patience, rhythm, and coordination is now a perfect example of how toy safety has become a major priority. Lawn darts, continuing.
I thought they were just, they just became unpopular over time. It just never, it never crossed my mind that it was a safety issue. And then, like I said, I was getting older, so I wasn't playing with them anymore, so I just never really thought about it, even to this day. Yeah, I guess they could have been a safety issue, but it was a toy, and I still don't see it as a big deal. If I used a pair right now, I don't know how I would feel about it. I don't know. What are these things?
Lawn darts, continuing with 70s toys that are no longer around. Do you remember lawn darts?
No.
This was a common backyard game in the 70s, particularly during summer barbecues. The rules were simple. You'd toss large metal darts with sharp tips toward a circular target on the lawn. The feeling of making an accurate throw and hearing that thud as the dart hit.
Maybe we did. I just don't recall that. I don't recall lawn darts, and that looks super boring. Now, you got the sack game, and then you've got the horseshoe. At least that was, you were aiming it. I don't know. I guess you're aiming darts at a circle on the grass. Mm. That's probably why I don't remember that game.
Hit the ground was exhilarating.
I remember those
However,
lawn chairs.
the frightening
Wait, I remember those lawn chairs. And the older they got, the straps would come apart and you sit in it and your butt would go down in the middle. I remember those.
truth was that these darts were not only heavy, but also sharp enough to pierce the ground and sometimes people. Just one bad throw or a child accidentally walking into the playing area could lead to a serious injury or even death. Tragic accidents prompted parents and authorities to speak out. Eventually, by the late 1980s, the US government completely banned the sale and use of sharp-tipped lawn darts. Today, if you find a set of lawn darts, they have rounded tips made of a safer, weighted material for throwing, but they no longer pose the threat of the original version. Easy Bake Oven, moving from outdoor toys to an indoor childhood classic, the Easy Bake Oven. In the 70s, there was no feeling quite like being able to bake your own little cakes and cookies with this magical oven. It was being able to
Now this was probably a fire hazard, if anything, because it had a light bulb. You had to get like 100-watt bulb to put in there. So, and then if once you baked your little cake, um, like your parents had to get it out because that sucker was hot, right? But yeah, it really did bake. Like mine wasn't that complex, like it's got double layers, but it was almost like a microwave-ish shape thing where you put the little pan in there. But yes, honey, I had the Easy Bake Oven. Yes.
To bake your own little cakes and cookies with this magical oven. It was every kid's dream come true. And the best part? It used just a regular light bulb to cook your treats.
See?
As
Yeah.
another source, and the thrill was in the process of making it yourself. You'd rip open the cake mix packets, mix them up, and put the tiny pan inside the oven. Then you'd sit back and wait, watching the light bulb do its magic. However, that very light bulb posed a significant risk. It got extremely hot, often reaching temperatures over 175 degrees Celsius, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, putting children at risk of severe burns if they accidentally touched the inside of the oven. Injury reports increased, with some children suffering second-degree burns. By the early 2000s, modern Easy Bake ovens replaced the light bulb with safer enclosed heating elements. This toy still brings back fond memories, but looking back, it's wild how it once posed a serious burn risk. Children could buy cigarettes. Now, let's discuss something that today's generation.
It's true. Because when your parents would send you to the store, they would say, get flour, get sugar, get a pack of cigarettes, get whatever, whatever. Um, I don't recall ever buying the cigarettes, but I knew other kids that did, and I knew their parents would send them to the store to get cigarettes. My dad smoked, but he always had cigarettes, going or coming to Chrysler to work. So we never had to go to the store for that, but we had to go to the store for, flour, sugar, something like that, milk. And we would always ask for the change. Can I keep the change? Because we could get penny candy. Yeah.
Might find unbelievable. In the 70s, children could easily buy cigarettes. Smoking was incredibly common back then, to the point where it was normal for a child to walk into a grocery store and buy a pack of cigarettes for their parents. Sometimes they'd have a small piece of paper with a handwritten note from their parents, and sometimes they didn't even need any proof of age. Vending
Yeah, because you had to have a note. But I saw $2.28. I can tell you for a fact that they were way cheaper than that because when I started smoking, which was after high school or senior yearish, and I started smoking, I remember a few years after that saying, if they go to $2, I'm quitting. So I was 18, 19, 20, and they weren't even $2. So I don't know why that's showing if it's 70s and they weren't $2.28. No, I don't
vending
know.
machines were also everywhere, from restaurants to public areas, allowing anyone with a few coins to buy cigarettes. Today, the situation has changed dramatically. Strict age regulations, thorough ID checks, and public smoking bans are widely enforced. A child trying to buy cigarettes now is illegal and will result in serious penalties. Cigarette vending machines have become a thing of the past, only appearing in nostalgic films. This change shows how much public health awareness has improved. High school smoking area.
Yes, they were definitely. It is definitely illegal. I don't know if I ever mentioned it, but I lived in Vegas for 22 years, and at one point I was consulting at a mini mart, and I had to set up the registers. And this particular day, I filled in for somebody that didn't show up. So I was doing the books, but I would run out and do the register if the other person needed help. And I had just gotten off work. And just as I was stepping into my apartment, the owner called and said, "So and so didn't come. Can you come back?" And I was like, "I've got an abscess, like my tooth." And he's like, "I promise, I will take you to the dentist or whatever if you could just come until I get a relief." So I turn around, I come all the way back, the whole 9 yards. I tell the girl, "Go ahead and counter drawer down. I'll take the customers." And a young man walked up to me, carrot top, um, and ordered a pack of cigarettes. And I'm holding my jaw. One of them, I'm holding my jaw, and I reach up and I get the pack of cigarettes and I give it to him, and da 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 da. And just as after I hand him the change, I was like, "Can I help you?" To the next person, and the lady flashed her badge, and I'm like, "Okay, can I help you?" And she's like, "You just sold a pack of cigarettes to a minor." I was like, "No, I didn't. I sold it to that man over there." And she says, "Yeah, he's a minor. I got a ticket for $500." And this was 2005, 2006. Yes. And I had to go to court on my birthday. Okay. So, yeah, don't do that.
Staying on the topic of cigarettes, another thing that was normal in the 70s, but has now completely disappeared, is high school smoking areas. Yes, you heard that correctly. Many high schools back then had special designated areas where students could smoke openly between classes. Teens could legally smoke their cigarettes without any opposition.
Now, we had an open campus where we go across the street to Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips, McDonald's, whatever. We had open campus. We could literally leave the campus, when we didn't have a class. But, and this was high school, but if we were smoking, we were just smoking and walking. Like, we didn't have a designated smoking area. That's kind of high school? Like, I could see that on a college campus, but high school?
Even many teachers smoked on school grounds, which created a rather smoky atmosphere. However, as public health awareness and the dangers of secondhand smoke grew, attitudes began to change. By the late 1980s, schools started getting rid of these smoking areas. And by the 1990s, the idea of students and teachers openly smoking on school grounds became truly shocking and almost non-existent. Speaking of how common cigarettes were in the 70s, we can't forget cigarette ads on TV. Images of rugged cowboys on horses, stylish celebrities, or elegant men calmly smoking filled television channels. These ads were designed to make smoking seem attractive, stylish, and even a symbol of success. Health concerns grew. As scientific studies began to clearly show the link between smoking and serious diseases, pressure from the public and health organizations led to a major crackdown.
I just quit smoking, y'all. I quit smoking February 13th, 2021. Right before I started traveling as a digital nomad. And I knew it was the dumbest thing I had ever done. And quitting smoking was the smartest thing I've ever done. I am so, I think about it all the time. I think about the fact that I quit all the time. And it is clearly one of my proudest moments in life. Like, I'm just so glad, and I don't have any desire to go back. Every now and then I'll get a funny taste, I don't know, before a meal, after a meal, in a certain situation, and it'll be like, what is that? Like, do I want coffee? Do I want sweet? Oh, you want a cigarette? Oh, that's not happening. So it still lingers even after what February 2026 will be 5 years, but never in a million years. I hated it on my clothes. I hated it in my hair. I hated it on my car. Like, that is just not gonna happen. And yeah, I'm really excited about that.
1971, the U.S. government issued a complete ban on cigarette advertising on TV and radio. Although the tobacco industry later adapted by shifting advertising to magazines, sponsoring sporting events, and appearing in Hollywood films, This change marked a major milestone in the fight against tobacco, completely changing the media landscape and how we get health information. Smoking on airplanes. If you ever flew in the 70s, you'll instantly remember the sight of airplane cabins often thick with cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
Back then,
First time I went to Paris was what, 92? Somewhere in there, and we smoked. But the funny thing is, I was on a flight 2021, 2022, maybe 2023. I was on a flight and it still had the ashtrays in the armrest. I'm like, I don't know how this plane is, but I hope you got a lot of glue because this sucker better fly. It still got ashtrays. Come on.
smoking on planes was
They were glued closed so that you couldn't open them. But yeah, I'm like, how the hell old is this plane?
completely normal. And even though airlines had smoking and non-smoking sections, smoke still went everywhere, filling the entire cabin. Ashtrays were built right into every armrest, ready for passengers to use. You could easily see the person next to you enjoying a cigarette without much thought for those around them. However, as the dangers of secondhand smoke became clearer, pressure from the public and health organizations increased significantly. People started to realize that inhaling others' smoke also caused serious health harm. In response to these concerns, smoking was banned on short domestic flights in the US in 1988. And by 2000, this rule was made even stricter. Smoking was completely banned on all flights in the US, whether they were short or long, domestic or international. This was a major change that led to cleaner air and protected the health of millions of passengers. Loose seatbelt laws. Moving to road safety. Something we take for granted today wasn't a given in the 70s. Extremely loose seatbelt laws. Back then, using a seatbelt was primarily a personal choice rather than a required safety measure.
Yeah, and I think some cars didn't even have seatbelts. There was a point where there were seatbelts. But because I can remember that the armrest, that was like my designated space when we went on road trips. And I was the one that helped my dad watch for the helicopters if he was speeding so I could spot him. But I sat on the seat rest in between my parents. And of course, there was no seatbelt. But are there seatbelts on the school buses yet? Because let me see, when did my daughter graduate? She graduated from high school in 2012. And I can tell you that up until that point, there weren't seatbelts on a seat bus, a seat bus. There weren't seatbelts on a school bus still. But yet we'd get a ticket if we didn't have on a seatbelt in the car. Or we get a ticket if we smoked with children in the car. Or we got a ticket if we were on our cell phone in the car, but yet we could put our children in a school bus with no seatbelts. Okay.
Many drivers thought seatbelts were restrictive or even dangerous in certain accidents. Even more notably, many cars from that era didn't even have seatbelts in the back seats, and children were often allowed to move freely in the car with no child seats or restraints at all. The image of a child standing on the front seat or sitting on an adult's lap while the car was moving was common. However, with the rise in traffic accidents and research on the importance
Didn't that look crazy for that baby to just be laying there exposed like that and anything could happen? That, oof. Now in retrospect, you could see the danger, but at the time, I guess.
of seatbelts, things began to change. New York became the first state to pass a mandatory seatbelt law in 1984. Drunk driving with high BAC limits. Another serious issue related to traffic safety in the 70s was the surprisingly common practice of drinking and driving. The legal blood alcohol content, BAC, limits back then were also much more relaxed than today. In many states, you could legally drive with a BAC of 0.10% or higher, a level considered extremely dangerous today.
But don't you think it's also due to the fact that maybe they didn't have the devices that to measure it. Um, and you also have to think too. Maybe they didn't even. I'm totally guessing, but they didn't even know to measure it. So things have to be developed over time. So it's not like they allowed it to be higher um, because it was okay, but and then they changed it. I don't think they realized, is what I'm saying.
Having a few drinks and then driving home was not unusual, and awareness of the risks of this behavior was very limited. However, the consequences of drunk driving became unacceptable, especially with the increase in fatal accidents. By the late 1970s
Oh, they've got some kind of devices that they're blowing into.
and early 1980s, a powerful organization was formed, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MADD. MAD and other advocacy groups fought tirelessly to pass stricter DUI driving under the influence laws. As a result, by the mid-1980s, most states had lowered the legal BAC limit to
She looks like she's drunk. She hired in bus fare. I can tell.
0.08%. This fight completely changed how we view driving after drinking, transforming it from an acceptable behavior into a serious crime, minimal airport security. Now, imagine a world where air travel was extremely comfortable and simple. That's exactly what airport security was like in the 70s. No long security lines, no x-ray scanners, and you didn't have to take off your shoes or worry about liquid restrictions. Passengers could go straight to the gate, meeting family and friends right in the boarding area. Cockpit doors weren't locked mid-flight. Sometimes, pilots even left them open. The feeling of flying back then was truly free and without restrictions. However, this lack of security came at a steep price, with a sharp increase in hijackings, over 200 recorded in 1972 alone. But it was the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 that changed everything forever. After that tragedy, the Aviation and Transportation Security Act was passed, leading to the establishment of the TSA, Transportation Security Administration. TSA implemented unprecedented strict security measures, from thorough baggage checks to full body scans, making the air travel experience completely different from before. What from the 70s do you think should never have been banned? Or is there anything you wish could go back to being normal?
The airline, I get the risks and the precautions, but I think that should happen on the ground in terms of people coming in and infiltrating and shady people, period, versus you putting the entire the entire country through this whole TSA thing. It's kind of weird. It's like, can I take this? Can I take that? Can I take lotion? Can I take perfume? Can I take it's a lot. And then not to mention charging us for luggage, which is not one of the things that's illegal versus, related to this video. But as far as stuff that needs to go back, they need to leave. The whole airline thing is just, it's taxing. That's the word.
Child labor. Another aspect of the 70s that we find hard to accept today is the presence of child labor. Although the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, had been in place since 1938, child labor laws were still relatively relaxed. It wasn't unusual for children to work, especially in agriculture, family businesses, or low-income households.
I never looked at it that way. We had candy stores, we had restaurants, and we helped. The children helped, no matter what it was, whether it was bagging the food and handing it to the customer or wiping the counter down, playing with the cash register. Like, we helped, But I never, even to this day, I never looked back and said, oh, that was child labor. I was working for free. I never thought of it like that. I'm trying to figure out when the heck was there child labor? There's, yeah, I guess there was child labor. And I just never perceived it as child labor. I mean, I'm looking at these kids, look like they're putting down a railroad track. Yeah, I see what you mean, but I never saw any children work hard like that. But as far as helping out with the family business, I thought that's why they called it family business. I just didn't see it that way.
Many parents back then believed that having a job from a young age helped build character, responsibility, and discipline in their children.
It does.
Children often did manual labor, helped out in shops, or worked in fields. However, with societal development, concerns about the dangers of child labor arose, particularly children's exposure to hazardous machinery or toxic chemicals. In 1976, the Child Labor Amendment was introduced, and it wasn't until 1989 that the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child, laying the foundation for protecting children's rights globally. Currently, the U.S. has tightened regulations under
And that's probably why, because the laws went into effect and all that kind of stuff during that time that I would have seen it. That would have been time. That would have been my time um, to see it. But obviously, that was the time for change. So when I say I didn't see it, that's because believe it or not, I'm not old enough. It would have happened before my time.
the
I would have seen it more.
FLSA, prohibiting children from working in hazardous conditions and limiting their working hours. This has helped protect millions of children from potential job-related risks. Owning exotic pets without permits. You might be surprised to learn that in the 70s, owning unusual exotic pets without permits was very common and largely unregulated. People could easily buy a unique iguana, a colorful macaw, or even a large boa constrictor from pet stores with little oversight. As the exotic pet trade grew, concerns about public safety, animal welfare, and ecological impact also increased. There were instances of escaped or abandoned pets, sometimes becoming invasive species that negatively affected native ecosystems.
What is that? That's like a cross between a rabbit and a possum. No, a cross between a kangaroo. He sure has big feet. A kangaroo. What is that? Huh. I have never seen that animal before. If you know what it is, let me know.
To address this, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service introduced regulations in 1980. And by the late 1990s and early 2000s, most states had passed laws requiring permits to own exotic pets, ensuring that their ownership is more strictly controlled and safer for both animals and communities. Red dye, number 2, shifting to food and health in the 70s. A food additive caused major concern. Red dye, number 2. This synthetic dye was widely used to create a vibrant red color in many foods and drinks. However, studies began to suggest a link between this dye.
Isn't this still a thing? Isn't this still in food, among other things? Like, they talk about it as if it's gone, and you could probably pick up a package right now and see red and yellow number whatever in the ingredients.
And potential health risks. Although conclusions weren't clear, public anxiety grew. Interestingly, even M&Ms, despite never using red dye number 2, they used red number 40, decided to stop producing red M&Ms in 1976 to avoid causing customer concern. Ultimately, to ensure consumer safety, the U.S. officially banned red dye number 2 in 1976. Red M&Ms later returned in 1987 when red number 40 was deemed safe. This is a classic example of how public perception, though sometimes not entirely based on absolute scientific truth, can significantly shape business decisions and government regulations. Cyclamate sweetener.
This is a classic example of corporate American dollars bullying and getting their way. You ain't. Look, I'm not even going to have this discussion. Not today. Not today.
Another food additive that was very common in the 60s and 70s, but later banned, is cyclamates. This artificial sweetener was 30 times sweeter than sugar and calorie-free, making it an ideal ingredient in diet sodas.
We called it saccharin. Cyclamates. We called it, they were little white pills, and I know because, of course, I thought it was sweet. It's going to taste like sugar, and so I ate a whole bunch of the saccharin pills. Yeah, that was a mistake.
In 1969, major concerns arose. A study indicated that extremely high doses of cyclamates could cause bladder tumors in test mice. Although this dosage was much higher than human consumption levels, the fear of a link to cancer prompted the U.S. government to act immediately. The U.S. banned this sweetener in 1969, and it was officially removed from the market in 1970. Interestingly, while the U.S. banned it, many other countries like Canada and European nations still allow the use of cyclamates, showing differences in global food safety regulations. We hope this trip down memory lane has brought you memorable memories and deep insights into a unique culture.
It has. When it all comes at you at one time, then you start to realize, yeah, that was a lot of crazy stuff. But the craziest thing is just imagine what we're doing now and how we're going to look at that in 20 years, 30 years, and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe they were wearing these headphones, right there on their head. We already know 5G, 6G, this stuff is dangerous. We already know the microwave is dangerous. We already know the food. I don't know. I guess we're eating 3D printed meat now. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what we'll be talking about? What the video will be like 20 things that were illegal but are normal now. You know, it's crazy. It's really crazy to think about it. But I just thank you for hanging out with me. And I thought it was pretty cool. That's the way I see it. Thank you, and I see you in the next video.